Good evening, everyone. I see the room is kind of naturally quieted itself, so thank you all for coming. I assume everyone is here to attend our first true public meeting for the Battery Street Corridor project. In case you are not, that's why we're here. Without further ado, I'm going to get into it. So I see a number of folks have been here engaging with kind of our materials set about the room. For those that have not, following the presentation, there will be a Q&A period, and then kind of an exiting open house format in case you want to engage with any of the project team. We'll welcome questions at the end of the presentation, but if you have any during, please by all means, this is very informal. Put your hand up and we can answer them, but we will have kind of a formal walkthrough at the end, or we'll have the corridor kind of enlarged on the screen. In case you want to provide very specific inputs on location. If you would rather not speak in front of the room, that is totally okay as well. That's why we have these boards set up to provide any specific input via post-it note around the room. But without further ado, thank you all for coming. Thank you for choosing to spend your Tuesday night with us and provide your critical input on a very important project in the city of Burlington. Just a quick recap of what we're going to do here tonight. I will introduce our project team. From there, we'll give you the nuts and bolts of the schedule for this project, how this will unfold. What exactly is a corridor scoping study? What comes out of an effort like this? A lot of time, a lot of involvement goes into this. What do we get out of it? We want to touch on that for you. From there, we will give an overview of our project corridor. This is Battery Street as it becomes Park Street, from Maple Street north to Sherman. We'll review what's going to happen next, and then we'll open it up to kind of an open forum Q&A as we step through the corridor. So with that quick introductions, my name is Drew Gingras. I'm with BHB. We are the consulting firm. I'm joined tonight by my colleague Karen Sentoff in the back here. We are working in partnership with the Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. I'm joined by Jason Jerez over here, the project manager for the effort, as well as Elaine Trisha, who just hid over there in the corner, but we can still see. And of course, we're working in partnership with the City of Burlington Department of Public Works. I'm joined by Dayton over here and Brevi in the back of the room. So we are your core group. Any input you want to provide, please either come to us or the board, or of course, speak amongst yourselves. Now, a project like this isn't successful without involvement from its stakeholders. Whenever we organize a corridor scoping study like this, we assemble an advisory committee, and these names up here on our screen are the makeup of our advisory committee. I know a few of them are here scattered about this evening. We like to make sure we are getting input from representation of many different groups, the neighborhood boards, of course the city itself, as well as other entities along the corridor or that regularly engage or interact with our corridor, like transit, local motion, the city's block, bike council, etc. So this is a very key part of our study effort, as well as making sure that entities and communities are represented that might not always be able to represent themselves. So a quick look at our project schedule. Tonight is the first public meeting, which is often called the local concerns meeting. So tonight, truly, we are here to hear from you. That's why we're here. We want your input. We want to hear what you love about Battery Street, what you want to go outside right now with a sledgehammer and potentially change about Battery Street. but longer term vision for the corridor as well as shorter term improvements we'd like to see made. We're here for you. We want it all. We see everybody who's either come early and stuck around or coming at it is providing great info. We can't wait to dive into this. What we see on our board, but beyond that, we want to be here for you. After we provide you a little bit more context for the corridor as well. Throughout the project, there will also be focus group meetings and kind of more localized touch points. These will be our version of kind of bringing the project to different communities along the corridor, engaging with them kind of where they are, where you all are. We want to make sure that we're providing options for large-scale public engagement, like a meeting like this, and also, meeting people where they are to check in with them and get their input on this very great project. Currently ongoing with the project, we're doing an existing conditions analysis. We're looking at all elements of the corridor as they exist, what makes up Battery Street as it is today, travel lanes, amount of traffic, crash data, things like that. Using those existing conditions and the key info we get tonight, we will move towards developing alternatives to the corridor. From that, we'll have our next touch point, our large-scale touch point with the public, being the alternatives presentation. That is where we will present the ideas that will very much be fueled by what we hear tonight. So please don't be shy. We are here to hear all of your concerns, ideas, dreams. So that's what we're looking forward to. Beyond that, we will regularly engage with our advisory committee. They are the ones who keep it going for the public and the project team. We will vet alternatives, make sure everyone's interests are being represented through them. Then eventually we'll move to City Council and a final scoping report that will summarize all the findings and deliberate a preferred alternative for the future of Battery Street. With that, I'm going to hand it over to Jason to review. What do we got?
Thanks, Drew. Hello, everyone. Again, I'm Jason Shrest with the CCRPC, project manager for the study on behalf of the CCRPC. That's Chittenden County Regional Planning Commission. So, what are the outcomes of this study? We're technically calling this a corridor scoping study. You can just think of it as a planning study or transportation planning study. That is fine. I don't need to fuss over the semantics or the details of what to actually call it. But wanted to just go over what the expectations you should have in terms of what might come out of the study. And I wanted to highlight the work that has been done previously on Colchester Avenue as an example, just highlighting mostly the timeline of things. We had an initial corridor study on Colchester Avenue in 2011. There was a repaving project that followed that, and there was an opportunity to, with paint, convert the corridor from 4 travel lanes to 3 bike lanes. Following that, we had further studies at some of the intersections. Next up was Pearl and Prospect, but there were some minor changes that came out of that. And in 2019, we again studied opposite of the corridor. There was a Barrett intersection, with a more refined alternative there. And just most recently in 2021, wrapped up a more detailed enhanced bikeways study that also specifically looked at the East Avenue intersection. So that's a long way of saying that this study is designed to kind of lay the groundwork. There will be some things that can come directly out of it, but there will be also some things that will require further study. And I just want to include some images of what sorts of concepts and ideas came out of that study that could potentially come out of this one in terms of how it relates to Battery Street. You can see some intersection concepts. On the left there is the Riverside Fair intersection. This is one that is just now receiving some V-Trans funding and does have some legs to move forward. On the top, you can see kind of redesign for the streetscape of Colchester Avenue, where we have added in sidewalks and a cycle track on either side of the roadway. It's the gray and brown lines, and you can see some intersection design and enhancements down the bottom two images. Any questions on outcomes that you might expect out of this study? Or I hand it back over to Drew. And you can marinate on that too as well. We can get into details afterwards. All right. Quiet, you make me nervous.
Can I just ask you?
There you go, Andrea.
You're showing us this as this is the model of what we can hope for with the Battery Street? Or are you updating us on a different project?
No, this is a model of what could potentially come out of this study in terms of like what we would call a preferred alternative, assuming that we can get community consensus around the concept. Great question, thank you.
Thank you, Jason. And with that, I'm going to kind of step us through our corridor talk to add a little bit more context to the boards we have around us, and hopefully, provoke a little thought among our group here for the Q&A at the end. So, just a quick recap. We're talking about Battery Street. It does become Park Street to the north, which on our screen is to the left, and that is going to be from Maple Street all the way up the hill to Sherman Street. Looking at land uses along our corridor, this is a very colorful map, and I think that paints a pretty clear picture that Battery Street is very much a mixed-use corridor. There is obviously the downtown core along the eastern side, page up on our screen here. That is promoting a lot of use, a lot of travel east-west, both on foot, by bike, by car, by truck, by transit. Lots of traffic comes to and along Battery Street. Obviously on the west side in the north section we have Battery Park that extends to the south down to College Street, and then we have other kind of downtown center mixed uses, obviously to the north and to the south, and just east and the south too. Of course, we have heavy residential use as well, so there are people coming directly from their homes, going directly to their homes. It's a heavy commuter route as well because of the commercial land uses both along it and at each end of it. So it's quite a mixed bag along Battery Street, as folks that probably regularly engage with the roadway know. That's what we're looking at here. But it's always good to assess what's happening on it and along it. A quick overview of crash data. So we looked at 5 years of crashes along the corridor. Those are displayed in what's called a heat map. So the kind of brighter the yellow, or the more red and yellow, the higher crash location an intersection is. So we can see in this case, College Street is where most of our crashes are occurring along Battery Street. That aligns pretty much directly with the amount of volume at College Street. That is also the heaviest intersection in terms of traffic moving through and turning onto and off of Battery and College Street. We can see highlighted with icons. There were 9 crashes over this 5-year period involving vulnerable users and or active transportation modes, being walking or biking. 2 of concern, all of them are of concern, but 2, for example, at the Monroe Street crossing, that's an uncontrolled location, it's a multi-lane location. There's a crossing there, there's an ROP there, there are these existing safety enhancements that we'll always take a deep dive into and look at along throughout our study. College Street, there are heavy pedestrian volumes because of the connection between the downtown and the waterfront. And there's also heavy walking and biking volumes as well there. So this is kind of an overarching look at the last 5 years. Not unexpected dip in 2020, given the state of the pandemic and not all of us, I should say, moving around as much as we're used to. Interesting trend there to see a slight increase last year in 22 as everyone gets back to moving around with some form of normalcy pre-pandemic. Concerning trend, ago. It was a beautiful April day. We did morning and afternoon, evening counts, and we saw nothing terribly unexpected. I think maybe the cooler morning led to some slightly lower bicyclist volumes than we would have anticipated. But in the evening, you see those numbers go up, especially at that College Street intersection. And what this really paints a picture of is there were a lot of people walking and biking through some pretty significant intersections where we're also seeing heavy auto use. That's, you know, always an interesting challenge to have to try and look at and solve as you move along the corridor. But what this told us was, yep, people want to walk and bike, need to walk and bike up and down and across Battery Street. And throughout this study, we're going to seek to kind of break down the barrier that it provides between the waterfront and downtown and try and mitigate some of this conflict potential between motorists and walkers and bikers. A quick kind of overview of the pedestrian facilities along Battery Street. They're somewhat variable. We have a very brief section of brick sidewalk in the southern end on the east side of the road. Beyond that, we have signalized pedestrian crossings at every signalized intersection, as well as pedestrian crossing at the one unsignalized intersection being on Rose Street along the corridor. Interesting interactions in some locations. This is just north, the top right here, just north of Main Street on the west side of the road, where the pedestrian facility kind of traverses an active and regularly used parking lot. That's an area of further investigation to see is that working for folks who people feel comfortable walking through here? Is it working just fine? Can you inconvenience it? But one benefit to Battery Street is there are pedestrian facilities up and down and across the entire corridor. Beyond that, bicycle facilities, a little bit more scarce. There's a single bike lane on the north end of the project on the east side of the road from Pearl Street up to Sherman Street. There was previously, last summer, correct me if I'm wrong there, that the two-way separate bike lanes were in place due to the temporary detour of the Burlington Greenway. From what we gathered, the feedback from bicyclists was generally positive. We really liked that connection. It separated motorists and bicyclists and pedestrians. That was a nice reaction and compromise to an otherwise shared space for bicyclists, pedestrians, which wasn't quite working out. But beyond current and temporary implementations of bicycle facilities, looking long term, the 2011 Burlington Transportation Plan calls for Battery Street to become a complete street. That means it is complete for all of its users, walkers, bikers, and drivers alike. And beyond that, walk, bike, Plan UTV, walk, bike called out that Battery Street needs protected bike lanes. These are facilities that are separate from the roadway, either both by horizontal and vertical barrier or completely off street. They are proven to be very comfortable facilities for the much wider population of bicycle riders. And looking a little further into the existing walking, the existing biking, the existing crash information, during the planned UTV walk bike phase, obviously, countless residents were interviewed in Battery Street, made the unfortunate top 5 list of what felt like the most unsafe, least comfortable roadways in the city. People that may regularly engage with it can understand why crossing it. There are points of it that are flowing cross section. There are short crossing. There are long ways. There are certain elements that just contribute to that lack of comfort, and that's what we want to hear from you about. That's what we want to see change for the rest of the Beyond that, looking at the existing parking and transit along the corridor, there's only 2 blocks of parking, and that's in the south end between Main Street and Maple Street. There are also about 4 transit stops along the corridor, one of which is a bus shelter. So there is active transit. As you all well know, there's a pretty significant connection to Cherry Street and the transit center there. And just given the commuter route, these are pretty popular bus stops. Moving on. So next
the transport of buses, there is not one bus that goes from the bottom of Battery to the top of Battery. They all turn off to the transit center. I would like there to be one that goes all the way from the north end to the south end, and the south end to the north end. So that some of the people who are in that early phase of your pictures of the millions of people biking and driving in those rush hour traffic maybe have an alternative form of transportation. Also in the Plan BTV, transportation, public mass transportation was a goal of 10% increase. And I'm glad to see you've got bus stops on here, and I'd like to see that also be addressed in the Battery Street corridor to more mass public transportation options.
Yeah, we do have Green Mountain Transit on our advisory committee, so definitely take that feedback seriously. Thank you. So looking forward, where do we go from here? These projects are defined by what's called purpose and need statement. Why are we doing this project, and why do we need to do this project? So based on what we hear tonight, we will formulate that statement, and that'll kind of become the slogan for this effort going forward. From there, we'll look at analyzing different alternatives based on the feedback here that we get tonight, as well as just general conversations and meetings among the project team and the advisory committee meeting. We have in about 3 or 4 weeks' time coming up, we're looking to get on the calendar our next touch point with our advisory committee meeting. That'll involve primarily following up with them on what we hear from you tonight. We're going to bring to them the input and what you all want to see Battery Street become. From there, we'll land on a number of conceptual alternatives that will then further develop into graphics and layouts, and those will all be shared and spoken about at length at our next larger public meeting, which will be the alternatives presentation. And those will incorporate all considerations from public input to available space to what we know about the existing conditions, what truly needs to be focused on and improved. We're going to really look to a lot of the intersections of this. I know oftentimes it's easy to think end-to-end, a consistent cross-section, but one of the things we keep hearing and have seen through site visits and just through public engagement that we've been doing to date. Maybe a quick plug, we have an online survey map, so if you think of something after the fact tonight and you really want to call it out on a map, there is an online tool on our project website that you can go in and make that note. We're going to take all of that and formulate intersection by intersection as well as corridor alternatives for this project. So quite simply make Battery Street better. And with that, I'm going to turn it all over to you. A very local lunch. This is where I'm going to be, as Jason said, a magnet. We're going to step through the corridor in 3 sections, and this will be the southern section, the hill section, and the northern section. And this is where we really want to hear from you. There's no question, not worth asking, no comment, not worth making. Everything is going to get written down, everything we will do our best to respond to. But with that, we have just similar to kind of the boards around you, aerial imagery to provoke thought, to promote calling out specific locations that you would like to see improved, or just want to point out an issue that you have given your day-to-day regular interactions with it. I'm not going to go start to call on anybody if I don't see any hands go up. With that,
I would just also mention, feel free to speak up and reiterate something that you may have already put on the board. Somebody else may not have seen that comment, and it may spur them to think of something to say. So please don't hesitate to reiterate something that you've already written down this time.
all right, with that, does anything stand out in the southern section to folks that they would like to speak to, comment on, ask about? We're kind of defining it.
This was mentioned in the slide, but I think there was a lot of positive feedback for those 2 low protected bike lanes in that section. I think I'm not sure if that's tracked, but, I think it got a fair amount of use by cyclists and pedestrians.
Yeah, for those that may not have heard, what was your name, I'm sorry?
I'm Ollie.
Ollie was just noting that when the temporary cycle track was in place between Maple Street and Main Street, he saw it get a lot of use, a lot of regular use from cyclists, and it seemed to be quite a popular amenity for the world. Yes?
I'm wondering, if this is outside the connection here, but, can the end of Battery Street be connected to, how will it be connected to Maple? Like if you're going on a bicycle and you wanna get to Pine Street, is that part of this study too? Is there a way to continue a lane up at Maple, or is sort of this project ends at Maple?
The project ends at Maple, but with all kind of corridors, as they naturally do have a beginning and an end, I think we'll absolutely think about connections to it from the southern and northern terminus of the project. And, south of Maple Street, there's also the Rail Yard Enterprise project, which I don't know in too much detail, but I believe there's going to be a multi-use connection and a shared use connection of some kind traveling south of Maple Street. That'll be a new connection to the Pine Street corridor.
I'd just like to request that it doesn't dump us all into the bike path.
Yeah.
Yes, and I just, being part of the area, that's a problem too. Just put the area, that problem is, I think, county of all those to segregate. Other things, so I think it's a good, interface to this study that how they all harmonize together. Clearly, there's a proximity to the battery to, bike path. There's a strong desire, I think, for those to actually happen.
Yeah, for those that might not have heard, Norm was just mentioning that the Rail Yard Enterprise, one of the project goals of that effort will be to accommodate all modes, driving, walking, and biking south of the end of our corridor here. And that's a good point to mention too, that Rail Yard Enterprise is one of two significant projects that will happen, not before, but during our kind of scoping study, the other one being the Great Streets Main Street project that's slated to wrap up design this year, get some shovels in the ground, and that'll end at the Battery Street intersection.
So Jean's just given me a great advice, just to elaborate on what I mean by that. So the connectivity, that there's clear ways for people on bicycles connected with as well as cars to know how to navigate leaving Battery Street, getting to either the Maple Street or the rail yard with a protected lane or with a bike signal for bikes, so that there's not competition trying to get to where we all need to go to the same place. So maybe like a protected lane, or I'm reluctant to encourage more paint, but some clear way for bicyclists to know how to get where they need to go. And also that if you could be choosing the bike path, which is not necessarily where you're going to want, if you're commuting, that's maybe not where you want to go if it's the peak of summer and there's tons of people there. So just being able to help people navigate where they can go and make the choice that they want to make.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you.
Will the Main Street corridor, connect to Academy, will that be the east and west bike corridor as well, or will it be by consideration of the Main Street project?
Yeah, as part of the Main Street, just to repeat the question, the question was, will the Main Street project incorporate a bicycle facility?
Yeah.
It just-
That would be the east west corridor that Academy.
Yeah, the Main Street project will have separate bike lanes on both sides of the road traveling in the east-west direction. And those will connect all the way down and through Batteries.
Would that be the only east-west protected bike corridor?
I don't know about future plans, but at the time it
Only one that's on.
will be built, it will be, I think, the only east-west fully protected bike corridor, yes. Yeah. I don't know about future plans, so I can't speak to that, but at the time it will be built, yes. Yes?
I have a question about police. That's their main job
Yeah. Yeah, so for those that might not have heard, there's just a noted concern about police traffic coming from the station at the North Ave, Badway, Sherman intersection, the speed at which they travel in response to calls or otherwise, just a noted safety concern on that. Yes?
What are you calling the southern section here? Is it all neighborhoods are college all the way?
Yeah, that was just to divvy it up to separate from the hill.
I would just offer that from how the street is built and how it feels, Maple to Main is significantly different than Main.
Yeah,
So-
yeah, I wouldn't put too much value behind how we divvied this up, this was that third presentation, but yeah, there's, the whole cross section changes, I think.
Right. So when you're talking about what technically associated with infrastructure changes to make it, I sort of see Main as like a natural place to possibly
Yeah.
break it.
Would you suggest, or are you thinking that there would be different facility types that would be included on the street cross section, north and south of Main?
I think it would be great if you had the same facility full length battery, but I think that's unlikely. So, I think you have more width to work with north of Main, and at least in the sense that you have extra lanes to play with, but, south of that, it feels totally different, so if you're gonna go with a facility that you have less space available, that's what happens.
This is our chance to
Great. Oh, also second, the notion that temporary detour cycle track was awesome. None of the businesses there that have street parking, to my knowledge, are under. Everybody still put that on in their lives. I think it was a great sort of pilot for what could be if that was the intended purpose.
Great idea.
Yeah, to add on to that, I think that was the only time I've actually ever placed it on Battery Street. And I think your data supports that, but that's not just me. When we bike a lot and actually, I would never, ever bicycle more than 1 block on Battery, just because there's no infrastructure. And it's obviously
Look forward to work on that hill section. Stir some more thoughts. Any input on this section? This is the 4-lane section of the roadway between College and Pearl. There's as you touched on, a 4-lane section just south down to Main as well. But these are 4 continuous lanes, 2 in each direction. Dual pedestrian crossings at each intersection. There are pedestrian facilities on both sides of the road. On the west side, there is the very, very separated pedestrian path. I believe it's intended to be shared use as well, that travels as an extension of Battery Park. Any thoughts?
Just think that one of the things that really changes that hill is a real rise of e-bikes. And as someone who changed for a commuter bike, that hill is now not a problem, it's a great road. With the fact that it's very sketchy with bike not wet. It is now, it is a great road, so hopefully you don't see the hill and the low numbers as the indicator, because hopefully, in fact, that's saying that the hills are an issue, the road.
I would add that it will be where the city that they're driving up and stuff. Because
Which side of the road do you tend to ride on one versus the other?
both, and I feel more guilty on the east side.
Or more guilty?
Yeah, it's just so much more sidewalk, and just on the west side, it's pseudo sidewalk. But if there's just no other way, it's safe.
I don't think that people will cross, if they're going north on a bike, will cross over to go on a shared lane to go up and then go back across. I think that operates counter to the way that people work, and people will then continue
I'm just saying that in terms of the ride on cycle, or, you know, and there may be other options, but I think that in terms of the formulation here, seeing the west and the east for bike lanes being distinct, not trying to force people who are going on the east side over to the west side and then go back over to the east side. I think that would not be great.
Totally agree with that.
So for those that might not have heard, just kind of a point against the idea of only having a bicycle facility on one side of the street in this section, because the movement when traveling north, you're on the east side of the street. It's not necessarily reasonable to assume somebody will cross to the west side, traverse up a bike facility, and then have to cross back in case their destination was on the east side of the road, which, as we know based on the land use maps, there's heavy residential, so it's likely a trip generator.
I think what's important to keep in mind here is there's a long-term, obviously, development, you see the development from the town center, we have a lot more activity on that sidewalk and on these two connections. So if we really want to establish a bike facility, it's really important to separate the sidewalk. Some proper streets for that. And, obviously, you get a lot more crossing on the Cherry Street. That was, those are kind of things to think about, if people tend to think about what it's today, but longer view, there's a lot of changes happening in the city. We think about how this generation invested, can prepare ourselves for those types of developments.
It's my understanding that the Great Streets project will be Cherry Street all the way to New Street, which is going to be no, there's that street that's supposed to happen in Cherry. Especially the right, there's the
Go back to chair, proposing and all, such.
correct, so I'm supposed to go also with the order of Cherry.
I think, trying to remember all the details of this, I think there's some corridors that are constraints in that street. So, I'm not sure I know that.
I didn't get all that, but I'll do my best to review what I heard, but the general idea is that there's gonna be some future development of the Burlington Town Center that'll be a significant generator in activity, particularly along the east side and that existing sidewalk. So if we were to consider a bicycle facility on the east side of the road, we would certainly want to separate users, particularly in this hill section where people will be traveling at different speeds. I would say, generally speaking, an uphill bicyclist is traveling closer to the speed of a walking pedestrian, but as a community member over here pointed out, e-bikes are growing ever prominent, and that is eliminating the constraint of the hill for those who have e-bikes today and/or in. But yeah, just the idea of modal separation is becoming more and more important as we look at, having different spaces, so different modes can operate individual to themselves and separate from others. Yes.
I was just gonna say, I live on Lower Valley, so I have to cross to the west side and walk up the right side, and I'm walking out, just fearing it and cross the main college, and youth center, but it's much nicer to walk.
So just to note that you have a resident of the southern section of the corridor, and she will generally cross Battery Street from the east side to the west side and walk up that side of the roadway because it's generally a more pleasant and more comfortable experience because the intersection is just built a little bit safer to cross on the west side. Yes.
I love that you're talking about the long term, thank you for bringing that up, Norm. The drainage and the surface of that road, well, which comes first, the drainage probably causes a terrible surface, especially at College Street. So I would put a request in for improved drainage, like from the bottom up, like if we're gonna really do this, like do it well, so it will last well for the next 20 years instead of needing to be repaved so quickly. both from the east side and the south, or the downhill side, as well as the hillside, streets that are entering into that, flood.
So just a note to not forget about the almighty drainage and stormwater management along Battery Street. It's often easy, especially in a study like this, to get hung up, rightfully so, on the movement of people and the safety of the corridor, but thinking about long-term sustainability and resiliency of a corridor like Battery Street going to be very important to keep in mind the impact to utilities as well as the existing stormwater and drainage infrastructure, and mitigating, worsening the impact to the existing system, and perhaps figuring out how to mitigate that and treat stormwater in advance of joining the otherwise existing lines. Yes?
Reducing this section from 4 lanes to 2 lanes,
I would very easily say nothing is off the table. I think any sort of road diet is something that we'll absolutely look at in the alternative space. That will be part of our analyzing future conditions. If that is thought to be an alternative, that's worth considering. So I don't think anything's off the table to consider and evaluate. Very important to know we are evaluating, we are considering, we are analyzing. We're not saying anything here is necessarily going to get better.
Just an observation on that section of Battery, I'm just noticing on the west side, there's, it seems sort of like loading through a transport facility somewhere. That's probably the side that you gotta look at, just across.
To clarify, what facility, what sort of facility?
Say if you're gonna, I don't know, say you're gonna put a two-way cycle track or something like that.
You don't like facilities.
Bike facility. I understand that it's across the street from where a lot of the traffic may be coming from, going to. But again, you don't have to cross Cherry, you don't have to cross Pearl, so that's two intersections. I guess I wouldn't mind crossing the Battery twice if I was going from college or Pearl. And then I was off the street, is that right?
Yeah, so just to note that the west side, at least in this section, seems to promote itself well for operation of a two-way bike facility, because there are inherently less intersections that you have to engage with, obviously, being Cherry and Pearl, if it is a west side facility.
But for those who live on the east side of Battery, we have to go to the side, in the middle of that, so we have to go to the sidewalk, we can do it, but on this, it's very much a problem for us.
Right, well, I would hope that even if there's a facility only on the west side, they would incorporate a crossing and block. Right? Cherry, there would be some sort of crossing facility at Cherry Road.
Any more thoughts, questions, comments on this particular section?
One more.
Yep.
Sorry. That's where a lot of the hotels are, and I know the hotel people were here earlier, I'm sorry they're not here still. But it would be awesome if some of those businesses created a shuttle for people up and down that stretch, like that there was, we're not gonna, I'm dreaming big from GMT to like create an amazing north-south corridor, but if they can't come through, why not a public partnership that the mayor loves with the city businesses to support a shuttle that goes up and down that stretch so that people could maybe get from Pine Street to the Juniper. I don't know. So a public partnership with the shuttle buses, not just the buses that are the Marriotts that we can't access because we don't go to the hotel, but one that's available for people in the community as well as tourists to facilitate movement of people to more places.
Yes.
Could you point out where crashes tend to happen the most, and also how crashes on Battery relate to the rest of the city? In relation to crash frequency information on
I don't know if my colleague might be able to speak to that. I don't have, unfortunately, an overarching knowledge of the crest history in the city of Burlington. Karen, is there anything that you might want to? No, yes.
I would have to lean on the data, I don't know.
I wouldn't be so bold as to say that, I say without confirming with the data, but yeah, I mean, the majority of the crashes, on Battery Street are occurring at College Street. If I had to guess, which I will note this work, but this is a guess, but I would say more than likely probably the rear end variety, given the speeds coming down the hill. Potential for side swipe crash types as well, given the lane configuration changes, combined with the speed coming down the hill. That's probably lending itself to some frankly, avoidable crashes with a change in the dynamic of the street. But yeah, as the Battery Street corridor compares to the rest of the city, unfortunately, I don't know. I'll bump up here to the north section, which we're just referring to as Pearl to Sherman Street. So this obviously we have Battery Park along the west side of the roadway here. Uncontrolled intersection with Monroe Street, signalized intersection at Pearl and Sherman. Interesting intersection configuration, different from the rest of the corridor at Sherman Street, slip lane out North Avenue. Any thoughts, concerns, dreams up in this section? I have some to share, but I'm not sure if that's.
I'm sorry to put Cindy on the spot, but I know that Battery Park is in a master planning future, and how do these projects overlap? The sort of evaluation and the Battery Park, is one of the confusing areas is that where the sidewalks kind of converge on the crosswalk is a bit confusing. But if there's gonna be treatments or changes to Battery Park, how does that align with the master planning or changes or input to the Battery Park itself?
Yeah, I'm not sure of that. I don't believe a planning study is underway. I'm getting a head shake from my DPW representative. So I'm not sure if we can really speak to any future evidence.
Yeah, it's not, we're not agreeing yet.
So they won't conflict, they complement each other?
I'm sure, I mean, the nice thing is we work in the same building, so.
I would venture to say that's a goal, if we have any parallel concurrent
Yeah, I can walk down that hall and we can have a book.
projects that are gonna be, I don't think they're gonna be anything that would be deliberately bad for movement of people. I think that's one of the kind of quintessential elements of work.
I would also add that if it's for Parks and Recreation on our application.
Yeah, so be it. Does anybody regularly use the Monroe Street crossing? Any thoughts to share? Gene?
For the most part, people stop when I stand there and then I sort of step out.
Compliance is good.
Is there a?
There is what's called an RFB, which is kind of flashing.
Yeah, so that has seemed to work. I'm older than most people, so I'm a standard. I do think that this whole area is really, really tight for biking. Really tight, and the convergence from multiple ways going south, and then the left-hand turn onto Pearl Street and now to Cherry, which will not be eliminated by the move of the high school, because we're going to be developing in there. That flow and then the backup of traffic here, I mean, I would never ride my bike in this section. I'd always be trying to find a way to like cut across, go through the park, and then figure out a way to get on the corner by Beansies, across to go north. But it's prone to kamikaze actions by bikers, and as long as our bike volume is low, it'll be okay, but if we succeed in doing what we want in the city, which is to increase it, then, as Norm was talking about planning, we better do a really good job of planning here. And this is a real bottleneck here, every day.
Just a note that bicycling through this section of the corridor feels really constrained, really tight, and really uncomfortable. Whether you're traveling across it or along it, it just feels, and given the kind of variability of the vehicular movements, the lefts and right onto North Ave, and dual travel lanes coming south off Park Street from Battery, and then if you were to ever want to turn left from Battery to Pearl to connect to that existing bicycle facility, all of it is very challenging, very interesting.
Like turning lane would be awesome.
I agree. Does anybody have any thoughts on the Sherman Street, the kind of slip lane that exists there? Do you feel comfortable trying to get into and out of the park at that corner? Do you venture elsewhere because of that condition, or are you okay with it? Any thoughts on that location, that movement on foot, by bike, or by car? Everybody loves it.
I never use that. I never
Okay,
use that
it's
signal.
very telling, yeah. Yes.
I have a comment, not on this section in particular, but kind of on the whole project, happy to hold it if that's better for.
Sorry?
I'm happy to hold it if that's better for a little later, I just didn't know if you had a general section at the end.
No, the next slide is my contact information.
Okay.
So I will say, I think you came in a smidge late, but we're gonna return to like a kind of an open house, format. If you'd rather speak to the project team or make a comment now, by all means.
Yeah, I'm happy to now, and I apologize for coming in late, so I could get away. It's great to see so many people here. My name is Jason Van Reich. Lived in Burlington for 15 years. I worked at Locomotion for 9 years, left about 5 years ago, and part of why I left was because I felt defeated by the slow pace of actual on-ground change for improved walk and bike facilities in the city. And my general thought on this project is I'm delighted to see that there's a scoping study underway, and I hope it leads to a total overhaul of the street on the scale of what is now being launched for a portion of Main Street, which is fantastic, and what was done a couple of years back on a few blocks of St. Paul, which is transformative. But I would hope that the scoping process and the long-term improvements do not take the place of near-term lower cost action to improve safety, which honestly should have happened a decade ago. But Burlington does a great job of coming up with grand plans and not such a great job of taking decisive, bold, rapid action. And the two are not incompatible, and I would just love to make a pitch for, in addition to thinking about the big picture and the long term, what can we do this year, what can we do next year with paint, with bollards, with things that have been used elsewhere, and really tackle this street aggressively, because it has significant safety issues, some of which have very obvious, very straightforward solutions that have been trialed and proven hundreds of other places and have the FHWA seal of approval. There is no reason to wait for the long term in order to start improving safety.
Yeah, I think as part of this study, we'll absolutely be looking at, and I think Plan BTV did a good job of this too, is identifying, 0 to 1, 2 to 5, and 5 to 10 year projects. And in that same vein, but slightly differently, I think there is always an element of these studies that looks at what can we do in the near term to combat some of these known safety concerns that we see along the corridor regularly.
Sure, and I know there's a lot of really strong capacity on the DPW team, so no offense to you guys at all, but I wouldn't want this project to be an impediment to the team saying, what can we do this year, that we don't even need a study.
Thank you. So with that, that concludes our presentation. Jason and myself are the representatives on the RPC and the consultant side. Again, we're joined by David and Revi on our project team at City DPW. We are going to hang out for a little while longer. If any thoughts were stirred up that you want to add more to the board, any questions that you have that you'd like to ask us, we're going to float around for probably another 15 to 30 minutes. A little package shop, but thank you all for taking the time to attend